everyone. Welcome back to the McMahon Group. I'm Angela Scott.
And I'm Lisa Schneider-Cipriano.
Okay, if you've ever had your heart broken or lost a loved one, you know the horrific pain that is involved in that. There's nothing quite like that feeling. But did you know there's actually a medical diagnosis, the heartbreak syndrome? Recently, newly diagnosed as that. Really, I was reading in Japan. Anna Prasa joins us from the grief counselor from Arizona Center for Grief and Loss.
Yes.
I was just reading that this was diagnosed in Japan, or actually became a diagnosable condition about 15 years ago.
But they're a little more at areas a little more advanced than we are in looking at other conditions. But broken heart syndrome is a physical condition that somebody, when somebody experiences a great shock, a great loss, a sudden trauma, and it actually is a physical condition where our heart does enlarge. It doesn't break, but we use that term to describe it.
So when you see a couple, let's say, that's been married for 65 years, and the husband dies first, and then literally like a month or 2, 3 months later, the wife dies, and they say she died of a broken heart.
Exactly.
That's
well,
what it means?
what happens, it's not our heart that loves. That's, that's the physical organ that we can identify with. There's a soul, and that's what we really love with. But, you know, when we have that pain in the center of our chest where our heart is, it's really our soul that hurts. But when our soul is in pain, it affects our mind and our body. It affects our emotions as well as our physical state.
Yes.
So the heart actually weakens from this. Do the symptoms mimic a heart attack?
Well, it is more of a pain that we feel in our chest. And so is it a physical pain? Yes, but it's also an emotional, spiritual pain. It's a whole body being. It's a whole being pain.
When you experience a broken heart, what are some of the stages that your body goes through? Is it first? Is it shock? Would be the first stage?
Well, experiencing a broken heart we go through the same symptoms as grief, because it's a loss. Whenever we have loved and lost, we grieve. No matter what we love, or does it matter how the relationship was severed, we go through a grieving period.
So would you say that children that are going through, their parents are divorcing, would children experience something like this?
Oh, definitely, they are. And with a divorce, it's not as final as a death. And there might be a lot of bickering going back and forth, and the children might be used as a toy at times. So they could be a little more emotionally scarred.
So would the grief be different, say, like she was saying about a divorce, versus if you were one of the people in Tucson during the shootings and you happened to be either experiencing that Saturday, or it was a loved one that was affected. So how does that relate to that?
Well, if we have past trauma, and then if we experience a trauma today, we can experience that deeper, and then we re-grieve the trauma of the past. And it also depends on our level of sensitivity. Some people are more sensitive than others. Some people can experience the trauma and not be affected, but some can be devastated for the rest of their lives.
Well, I was thinking that when Christina Taylor Greene's parents are being interviewed, here your 9-year-old daughter is gone. And yet they're talking on camera and not really crying or shedding a tear. I don't know, number one, like you said, experiencing it differently, if I would even accept doing an interview. My gosh, my daughter is gone. And yet it maybe a denial at that point. They were so together, where there were other people who were just witnesses of what took place, and they were a mess.
But sometimes a tragedy is so powerful that we shut off. We have to become numb in order to survive.
Right. And does time truly heal all, would you say?
Well, we heal in time.
In time.
Time allows us, if we work at it. Grief takes a lot of energy.
I'll tell you, Anna, as you and I were talking before the show, and Lisa, I think everyone's probably experienced some type of heartbreak.
Yes.
Thankfully, I've had one in my life, but it was one of the hardest periods of my life for me to get through. And I think for me, it took a year or two to truly get over that heartbreak.
There's like a 2-year rule. Some people are less, some people are more. You've heard some people, when their spouse dies in 2 months, they're married again.
Yeah.
Right, especially men.
Have you ever
God bless them.
Have you ever heard of, in my situation too, when I had experienced heartbreak in college with a boyfriend, I made a vow that I would never allow myself to feel the hurt the way I felt. I was devastated, and it's like still to this day I carry this wallop with me.
You know, a lot of times I look at it as a fairy tale syndrome too, that we were raised on fairy tales where people would meet, they would fall in love, and they'd live happily ever after. Well, that was a fairy tale, it's not reality. So as little girls and little boys, we grow up with thinking we'll meet that one true love and we'll live the rest of our lives happily. It doesn't happen. And so our ideas and our ideals of love are diminished. And instead of looking at a lost love as a failure, oh, I failed in that relationship, well, why can't we reframe that and look at it as just an experience of life? We had this wonderful experience. And so why diminish a wonderful experience because it ended? Well, an ending, we can have other experiences too, just as wonderful, if not more wonderful, because we could learn from their last experience.
Right. You know, and when you talk about the fairy tale, I think for women, we're allowed to show emotion. We're allowed to grieve something. We're allowed to cry and look weak, if you will. I think for men, there's almost an image that they're supposed to uphold. How could you have loved like that, and how is it truly affecting you? Do men feel as deeply as we do as women?
Definitely. I think sometimes men can feel a little deeper because they're not supposed to show their sensitivity. And men, I think, you know, are just little boys in a big body, you know, and I think we need to address that and look at that. But, you know, not allowing ourselves to cry is the biggest harm we can do to ourselves.
Why is that?
And this image that, you know, if you cry means you're weak, it has nothing to do with strength, because crying is just an emotion like laughing, and the tears kind of wash the sorrow out of our hearts.
But if you cry, does that also mean that you're depressed?
Depression? People cry when they're depressed.
Okay.
And we're also so afraid of depression. Like we were talking earlier about antidepressants. There's a time and place for everything. When I work with people and they're on antidepressants, they can't cry. There are some that you can, some you can't. It depends. But so they can't really process.
They need the roller coaster. They need the ups and downs.
We need to go as deep as we can to bring up the pain, get it out, talk about it, and talk and talk and talk, and cry as much as we can cry. Because then it gets it up and out. It's like therapy. It is therapy. It's like exercising to build strong muscles. I believe treating grief with just medication is like giving you an antacid for a broken leg.
So what are some things we can do naturally to help the process of healing from a broken heart?
Well, first of all, we're needing to keep our bodies healthy. We need to eat lots of good, fresh fruits and vegetables. Take vitamin C because it affects our immune system, because it is such hard work to do. We can get some lavender oil. Sometimes we're going through grief, it's hard to sleep. Sprinkle a little lavender oil on your pillow, which is a natural sedative.
You mentioned
relaxant.
magnesium too. Magnesium?
Magnesium is
what does that
another
do?
nerve calmer.
Oh, okay.
Anything to calm our nerves, chamomile tea. Stay away from stimulants such as a lot of alcohol, coffee, any soft drinks that are stimulating. We want to keep ourselves as soft and as comforted as possible. And if we do this, then the grief and the loneliness will start to diminish.
When you mention lavender spray for the bed, one of the things that comes to mind to me is I think after people get divorced, they're married for many years or have a long-term relationship, the empty bed.
Yeah.
Being alone in your bed, that's a hard
Exactly.
thing to get used to when you're used to that other person there.
It's very, very,
Yeah.
And this is the time we can redecorate. Roll the bed out, get a new one.
Buy a
paint the
body
walls.
pillow. Yeah, get a couple body pillows. There you go.
It is an adjustment. We don't want to minimize the adjustment aspect of this. But you know, I believe we can learn from all the experiences that we have, and it's how we're going to frame it and how we're going to look at it that deems it right or wrong, good or bad, healthy or none.
And as far as talking about it, it's very important that if you're helping somebody through it, to talk to them about all their feelings and their emotions.
Talk. That's where a lot of people say, oh, they don't want to hear it anymore.
Right.
I don't want to burden my friends. Well, that's where a grief counselor comes in, because we can talk about it as long as they're needing to talk about it, because the feelings are so huge inside, so dramatic and so overwhelming inside. By talking about it and crying, it lets it out.
Great.
And then we can see it differently.
Okay, Anna Prasa, grief counselor for Arizona Center for Grief and Loss, helping heal our broken hearts. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after the break.
So